Well, hello Big Finish listeners, and welcome to Dark Gallifrey, a series of which where the Time Lords have forgotten to pay the energy bills, and all the lights aren't working. Or at least I think that's what the series was originally about, before they changed it and made it a lot cooler. That was the plot I pitched anyway. And with that in mind, it's certainly a good thing that they decided to give the writing job for this first set of 3 stories to Tim Foley, rather than myself, who's definitely started to devise a rather exciting trilogy of adventures focused around the Time Lord who goes by the name of Morbius, as portrayed by Samuel West within this series. Now, joking aside, going into Dark Gallifrey, I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't read much of the press release. I wanted to go in with as clean a slate as possible, with no expectations, and I'm really glad that I did. So this release is available to order now from the Big Finish website on both physical CD and digital download. It can also be purchased in a bundle, I do believe, of this first set of 3 stories and the next, which I think is a War Master trilogy. So it's interesting seeing Big Finish go back to almost a monthly range style of formatting over the box sets. Rather fittingly, Dark Gallifrey begins with a voyage into the depths of the time vortex. The Gallifreyan ship Proteus is about to set sail home after the final battle on Karn, as Time Lord forces battled against Morbius. Captain Argento runs the ship with the support of Middlewitch. However, their ship is the last to leave the planet, and the ship is in the company of Sisterhood of Karn member Gilda. I was rather looking forward to the start of this series, and when I seen that Tim Foley was on the writing credit in particular, I was even more excited. He's written some utterly superb stories for Big Finish in recent years, and is the perfect person to start off a brand new era. And he does not disappoint. The thing which drawn me to this story the most is its world building. The Time Lords we hear from are from the distant past. Their technology is mostly underdeveloped from what we know, and when I mentioned setting sail into the time vortex earlier, I meant literally. These Gallifreyans travel on a boat through time and space. It's kind of like the 5th Doctor story Enlightenment, but on a much grander scale. And the joys of audio means that no one is there keeping track of the budget, meaning this episode absolutely relies on the imagination. I had lots of fun imagining the time vortex swirling around the ship within this story, and I think the dialogue really enhances that. The dialogue is so rich with detail. Gilda is introduced to the many parts of the ship through Middlewitch, so in turn us as listeners are also taken on that journey. The way Tim Foley incorporates little nuggets of practical knowledge into the script really enhanced my enjoyment of the plot overall. Like the wood the ship is made from is soaked in the gravity wells back on Gallifrey, and there's crows in the time vortex that have flown away to distant worlds, of course referencing the crows that are on Earth, and no doubt other planets as well, it seems that Tim Foley has decided. This environment feels like a living and breathing location.
Steady! Steady! Quite the view, eh?
What is this sky?
It's the vortex. What we sail on, in, through, between.
It looks so violent. Those lights all hit the ship.
Ah, we're fine. The scanner masts keep us safe.
The Atmos soundtrack within this episode works incredibly well also. It's referred to within the behind the scenes, and I was completely unaware that the actors recording for Big Finish, sometimes they put an Atmos track into their headphones, so when they are performing the script, they can hear the creaks and the groans of the ship that they are on, which I just think is brilliant. It immerses the actor within the story, and I think that really elevates their acting as well. The whole instalment feels like a reckless expedition. With Vortex ravaged by the war, it's not going to be easy riding the waves of time. Captain Argento particularly is under a lot of strain. The war has taken its toll on everyone, but her prickly sharp persona I think really ups the stakes of the plot. I think Doctor Who tends to tone down its angry characters, but Argento, you can tell, is on the brink, if not already exceeding the brink. They're certainly on that journey to the breakdown. So well done Rachel Atkins for being quite scary. I think it is only fair for me to say that despite the title, Morbius, he does lurk around in the background of this one, although he's not in it much, which may disappoint some. But as a listener, knowing that I'm committing myself to the next episodes within this series as well, the next 2 releases of the trilogy, I was already preparing myself to reserve my complete opinion until having listened to all 3 installments. But I think Samuel West's lack of presence within this story will certainly be a surprise to some. Personally, I don't think it taken away from my enjoyment of the episode, as I was really taken by the world building, but for those listeners who prefer simply to get the ball rolling immediately, here is your villain, here's what they're doing, here is why they're bad, and having that full-on combat to start off the series, that may be a little bit of a letdown, as the episode is very much introducing the concept of the series. The story has no resolution, if that makes sense. It's more of a chapter of a much bigger story, so by listening to this part, you are kind of committing to the next episodes as well, in order to maximise your enjoyment. Personally, I was really excited to hear Big Finish embark on a series like this, and this opening instalment certainly sells the potential that this series has, and what lies ahead. Laura Lemon's performance as Sister Gilda grounded me in the somewhat magic and wizardry of this much younger Gallifreyian society. Her warmth and inexperience to all things Time Lord provided for a perfect opportunity to inject the narrative with that sense of danger, highlighting how everyone on this ship is voyaging into basically an absolutely treacherous unknown. I really enjoyed Hewell Morgan as well as Mr. Middlewich. He is that authority figure within the ship, he has lots of intelligence and passion to navigate the ship forward, and I think that he really holds the narrative together, especially in the absence of a doctor figure. He is the one very much pushing the ship forward. The format of this series may be a little bit of a put-off to some. I suppose it encourages a particular listening method, which some may not like. Although, especially at the minute, I do kind of appreciate it, because I'm struggling to get through a whole box set, especially one that is connected via plot arc. I'm feeling the need to really pace my listen in order to understand all the threads of the story, but most importantly be able to appreciate it. And although some people do the alternative, where a box set is released, if they have the time, they set aside the entire day to sit down and listen to the entire 4 hours and then be done with the box set. At the minute, I simply can't do that. And when it came to reviewing this series, I did question in my head, do I either tackle each instalment as its own separate thing, or do I wait until all 3 instalments are out for those 3 months and then review it as an overall package? As I'm definitely getting the impression from this story that the Morbius trilogy could very easily be shaped into a box set format with a slipcase, and it's simply 3 one-hour stories that are all connected into one big set. It's a format of which the Big Finish use all the time with many of their ranges. And perhaps going to the 3 CD separately sold format, it may put people off, because it's now 3 separate investments. But given that this series is doing it, given that we had the Sontaran series earlier this year, and even the upcoming line of Bernie Summerfield are also doing a similar thing, we are seeing Big Finish move back to a monthly range style of format, which to me is making me question maybe the box set format doesn't have as much attraction as initially thought, but I completely get separating series off into its own individual lines, especially for the classic Doctors. Maybe an alternative could have been you had the option to purchase the Morbius trilogy as a bundle of 3, and then with that, if you purchase them all together, maybe you got an exclusive slipcase, so you're buying it as a box set, maybe even at the box set price, or you also have the chance to buy the same individual CDs individually. One thing is certain though, is that this episode has got me hooked, it's got me interested, I want to find out what happens next, and that's really exciting. It's nice to have a story with a cliffhanger that's got me waiting in anticipation for the next release, which is in a month's time, and I like that. It's kind of like Doctor Who being broadcast on TV, which I know is a touchy subject at the minute, given the streaming options currently available and when Doctor Who is going online on BBC iPlayer, but I like that. I like that it's giving that sense of direction and something to tune into every month. And given that all 3 episodes are also written by Foley, I've got a high standard that I'm expecting because his writing is brilliant, but also I'm expecting a sense of really satisfying consistency weaving all of the instalments together. Dark Gallifrey also begins with this wonderful speech, a prologue, I suppose, holding the listener's hand and giving this contextual information, which I think really sets the environment of this series up. We are dealing with Time Lords from the distant past, so things are a little bit underdeveloped. We have some great scenes of the Academy, which are very brief, but also a bit of a backstory to Morbius as well, and setting up the force that this trilogy is going to be dealing with, without really having him present. So again, I think that this sells the series. It's almost like reading the back of a book and going, oh, this one really interests me, because it instantly delivers within the first few minutes. This is what we're going to be doing with this series. This is why you should be listening. One of the comparisons that I can give that this series definitely isn't like is if you've listened to Out of Time. With those releases, you got an individual story, it was standalone, and it wrapped up quite neatly. By getting this release, don't expect all of the answers. If anything, it starts to raise the questions, and we have lots of threats that I think could potentially potentially hit this Gallifreyan ship within the next few installments, but also lots of challenges to the upcoming dynamics between the characters. The thing which excites me most about this series so far is that it doesn't seem like standard Doctor Who. With the Doctor absent, we are doing something different here. The whole soundscape of this story is incredibly impressive, and getting used to these characters that are completely brand new is also really exciting. And having an antagonist at the helm has previously worked very, very well in other series, the likes of the War Master, in my personal opinion. And I think it's really exciting hearing Big Finish basically create a monthly range, but for the villains of Gallifrey. I think that it does create a rather ruleless nature for this series in the future, and hopefully it does get quite a large listenership, because I think that this series hopefully will really sell the strengths of what Big Finish has to offer, but also the different potentials for storytelling, of which that the TV show doesn't really do, and is probably quite unlikely to do because of the way that it's set up, as we don't have spin-offs on TV dedicated solely to the villains yet. So I suppose I will see you hopefully around the same time next month for the second instalment of Dark Gallifrey Morbius, and hopefully it's just as exciting and promising. See you then.